Hey everybody, let's talk about the first Mercury retrograde of the year, which begins on April 1st and extends till April 25th. And this is going to definitely add to the wild and crazy of April. Mercury is going to go retrograde through the sign of Aries. And this is tough. It's really hard for Mercury to go backwards in the sign of Aries because Aries is a sign that wants to go forward. And when Mercury is in retrograde, his energy is pulling us back. So that is difficult to deal with. You also need to be patient when Mercury is going retrograde, and Aries is not the best at patience. So there's a lot that's in play as we, maneuver our way through the detours that Mercury retrograde is going to be taking us on. What I'm looking at right now is the picture of the skies when Mercury goes to retrograde on the 1st and when he goes direct on the 25th. And there's so much that's going to change in that, 25-day period that I want you to, above all things, keep an open perspective about where this Mercury retrograde is going to take you. And, the detours may be very important and necessary and ultimately be beneficial for you. But the thing is that as we kind of think about the trajectory, Mercury entered his shadow zone going back into March. It was actually March 18th. And this is when some things maybe started to present in a very subtle kind of way of things that were calling us back, or a thing of a necessity to kind of start to slow down a little bit, and ultimately, even though Mercury is going to go retrograde on the 1st, and we're really going to be experiencing it, when we get to the 25th and he goes forward, we're not going to be able to really process everything and synthesize all the things that we've discovered from the 1st to the 25th until we get to May 18th, because that's when Mercury will exit his shadow zone. So it's a process, and the most, impactful time of the whole entire process is when Mercury goes back, which is the 1st to the 25th. And he's going to retrograde. He goes retrograde in Aries in the 27 degrees. So he gets really, he's at the end of Aries. There's 30 degrees in every sign. So he's really at the end. And then he goes back, and he's going to go all the way back to 15 degrees Aries. So, there's a lot that's happening along the way. We're going to be experiencing a total solar eclipse on April 8th. We're also going to be experiencing the massive collision of energy with Jupiter and Uranus colliding on April 20th. There's also going to be a Scorpio full moon that's going to happen right before Mercury goes direct. That's going to be, the Scorpio full moon is on April 23rd, and Scorpio full moons are notorious for bringing out, secrets and massive revelations. I just think that there's so much that's going on with this particular Mercury retrograde, which is the first of the year, that is really signaling us to review things before initiating, also, you also might, on a negative, also might engage with the consequences of going forward with something when you should have waited. And again, it's really difficult for any planet to go retrograde in Aries, because Aries wants to go forward. So people who have a lot of that Aries energy in them are going to feel this the strongest. But we all want to begin, we all want to go forward, and not many people that I know want to go back. But there is a necessity to go back in this period. And there's a lot of various turning points that are happening in that trajectory between April 1st and the 25th. We're going to, so on the 1st, Mercury goes retrograde, and then on the 8th is the total solar eclipse. On the 11th that's a very big turning point. That's when the Sun and Mercury are going to are going to touch, and that's a very important time of insight. There might be news coming in there might be some sort of, maybe a trip or some sort of movement. Something is knocking at your door, whether it be information or going somewhere or, Mercury is about news. He's also about thoughts. There could be important downloads, but I feel like that April 11th is going to be a really important portal, takeaway of this particular Mercury retrograde. Another thing is that Chiron is a big player in April, and he is the wounded healer. He is not a planet, he's an asteroid. And there may be, Mercury is about your words. It's not only about your thoughts, it's about words. And maybe there is some important conversations that you're going to need to have with people in regards to grievances of the past or hurts of the past or things that are, like that you've had on your mind that you need to get out, that you need to communicate. So there's something very important about Chiron, and he shows up very, very strong. He's very strong on the April 8th solar eclipse, but he presents again on April 15th. And that's when Mercury is actually going to touch him exact. And, I like to watch Mercury's movements in the retrograde, because I feel like he's telling his own kind of story as he's playing tricks and creating lots of frustration and aggravations. And, I like to remind everybody to keep your expectations rather low with Mercury retrogrades, because, it's best to just kind of be even keeled about what's going to happen in the period. Like, we're all going to be taken on different trajectories. We're all going to need to experience some sort of frustration or some sort of technical snafu or, detour, whether it be literally on the roads that we travel or, in certain things in our lives, metaphorically. There's a lot of those stops and starts that can be frustrating, infuriating, actually. But take a moment, take some time to slow down and maybe even take some time to heal. Again, let's just go back to that wounded healer, Chiron. Like, there's something involving healing. Another thing with the Mercury retrograde this go is Venus. Venus will also be traveling through Aries, and she's a vixen in Aries. Like, Aries is about pioneering and about being bold and daring, and Venus in her best state, she loves to be in like the more peaceful and the quaint signs. But Aries is courageous, and she's a warrior, and like the goddess and the goddess of love and peace has a hard time being in the sign, wearing her warrior wardrobe. So you may encounter some relationship situations with this Mercury retrograde where you want to be bold and daring and courageous, and maybe somebody doesn't want that, or maybe they're having a hard time engaging with that with you. Like, there's definitely going to be some relationship dynamics and the importance of needing to have conversations, and maybe the necessity to not be so bold or to be a little bit careful about how bold you are. But Aries likes to do what it wants to do, and sometimes it's hard to stop it. So it's going to be, I just know that with so much of this period, it's going to be like, I shouldn't have done that, but you did, but here I am making the video beforehand to kind of try to, give you a little bit of a heads up. I also think that the April 20th, Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, which is just a grand slam of energy. I think that that's also going to be an important piece of this Mercury retrograde and the findings and the discoveries that we encounter. Like, there is a really important portal. There's a lot of portals that are happening in April, but there's an important portal, that Mercury, there's all these portals that are creating this new developments for us, but Mercury is like laughing in the background, and also just like cooking the books to you know, kind of mastermind things and to turn things to in going into ways that we didn't think that they would go. Expect to be surprised for sure. On April 23rd, we're going to have a Scorpio full moon, and that is also going to bring out some massive revelations. Scorpio full moons are always known for, you know, really kind of calling out the elephant in the room. And I've done a whole separate video on the Scorpio full moon itself, but I just feel like that's going to be another important piece to this Mercury retrograde. And finally, when Mercury goes forward, everything is not going to be perfect on April 25th, but at least we will now have Mercury, you know, kind of going forward versus back, which helps us get our show back on the road. Ultimately, remember, we are not going to be able to, you know, kind of really assess everything that happened with the Mercury retrograde until we get to middle May. But I really feel that by the time you get to the end of April, you're going to have not only felt like you've lived 10 lives, but you are going to engage with new understanding, new insight, new connection, and new awareness to be bold in the right places and to be brave in the right places and to also know like what's got to go. You know, I think that this is another piece of this puzzle is like, you're not going to be able to start and do new things unless you get rid of some old things. So I think it's important to think about that along the way too. And I've been mentioning that, but it's just the more I look at all the pictures, like I really just, you know, just am continually reminded of that momentum. The last thing I want to say with this Mercury retrograde is that I don't want to forget about Pluto. Pluto is a big player this year. He's operating in the sign of Aquarius, which is his new home. He will pretty much be here all year, except he'll go out, you know, in September and come back in November, and then finally immerse back into Aquarius, where he's going to be till 2044. And, you know, like this is calling us to find our community, to connect with the people that are, you know, like us, to find those types of people. And I really encourage you to do that, especially if you struggle during this Mercury retrograde. Like, find your tribe. You know, Mercury in a fire sign, fire works very well with air. And Pluto in Aquarius is air. And so that's fueling fire. So try your best to make connections. You know, again, try to be careful about what your intentions are. But go in with authenticity and find those connections, because I think that part of getting through any struggle or any grievance or any detour or kind of needing to go on a plan B, which Mercury retrogrades always, you know, present. It's better when you have somebody to bounce it off of or talk to about it, right? Internalizing is not an Aries, you know, thing. It doesn't like to internalize. So I think that there's something about externalizing and also finding healthy ways to externalize. So whether it's through something physical or connecting with a group or being able to talk about it, I think that you should find some ways to externalize. And again, lots of good luck to everybody as you go through all these shifts. I've outlined where the Mercury retrograde is happening for you in your horoscopes. It's basically in the same place where the total solar eclipse is, because it's all happening in Aries. Such a profound amount of energy with wherever Aries is in your astrology. And I've taken out the guesswork and I've done it all for you in the horoscopes. But it's just important to kind of pay attention to where is this massive portal of energy. Like, where am I, you know, where am I feeling it in my life? You know, like, there's something to say about where somebody says it's happening, but also like, just like take a step back and kind of pay attention to like, what is happening? You know, like look at the reality of what's happening, and our realities are shifting. They really are. So, lots more in the horoscopes, and I hope that you found this information and, you know, not only inspirational, but also helping you to plan. All right. Good luck.